Alright, so here's the thing started to get assembled together. I did this so that I can explain a couple things, because this is where a little bit of the whiz bang comes into this project. This is a generator stand, this is a generator. We're going to have a pulley on here. This pulley will be driven by the steam engine that I built them last year. There'll be a belt that runs between the two. When it creates electricity, just like it would do at a power generation station, it'll light a lamp at the top, just like a light post on the street. I used to dabble in electronics many years ago, but a lot of things have changed. And I called a friend of mine and I wanted to bounce some stuff off with him. And his name is Brett. He has a YouTube channel called Survival Comms. I'll put a link in the description box below if you want to go check out his channel. He does a lot of stuff with survival gear, survival communications. If you're one of those prepper people, he's your man. But he is a genius when it comes to electronics. And I said, hey, I got an issue. I need to work it out. And we talked about it a little bit, and here's the issue. All this generator is a little tiny electric motor, like would be in a radio control car or something. It's a permanent magnet motor, which means there's a couple of permanent magnets are inside there and a coil that spins by them. When you spin this by hand, you will actually create electric charge. Now, instead of using a light bulb, we're going to use something called an LED, a light emitting diode. And let me explain to you about an LED. If you've seen the new flashlights have been out over the last year or so, they get smaller and smaller. They're super bright and they run a really long time on very little battery use. And the reason is most all of these are powered with this little LED. And this is not a light bulb. This is actually a silicon junction that's inside here. And when electric charge is put through it, it gets excited and it produces light. They're very efficient. It is a diode. This is the symbol for a diode. When they put the two arrows on it, that means that it emits light. Now, don't get all freaked out. If you're not an electronics person, I get that, but stick with me for a minute because you might learn something here. A diode is basically an electronic version of a check valve. Electricity can flow one way, but it can't flow the other. In the case of an LED, when we put it so that electricity flows through it, we get the polarity hooked up correctly, it emits light, but still acts as a check valve. Now, here's the reason I bring that up. In an electric motor, one of these little electric motors, as long as we continually spin the generator or the little electric motor in the same direction, we will always have positive and negative come out of the same posts. But if we reverse rotation, the positive and negative change directions, which means this will not illuminate. Now, these little steam engines that I built a reversing valve in them, meaning that the steam engine can run forward and reverse. Now, kids are playing with them. They don't get the whole diode theory. So I got together with Brad. I said, hey, here's what I got. Here's what's going on. How can I fix that? And he said, look, why don't we just run everything through a full wave bridge rectifier? Now, don't freak out. Here is a full wave bridge rectifier. Let me explain why I'm showing this to you. A rectifier is nothing more than a diode. It's a one-way check valve. These are diodes. These are not light emitting, they're standard diodes. And diodes come in all different colors and shapes and sizes, and then some of them are bigger and smaller and they look different. But basically they all do the same thing. Allow current to flow in one direction. I have to make sure that the current never can reverse to this LED, otherwise it won't illuminate. So the way this works, if you imagine the generator, this is the generator, these are the two wires from the generator. As long as we spin it in one direction, if this one is positive, positive will come through, jump over, come through, and light the light bulb. Negative makes its way back to the generator again. If we spin the generator in the opposite direction, this becomes positive. The one-way check valve won't let it go this way. It goes this way, back through the light bulb. The negative makes its way back. Basically what it's doing is always assuring that the lamp always has positive and negative on the same poles. It doesn't matter which direction I spin it, what'll come out of this is positive and negative all the time. One more thing we're going to add. This is an electrolytic capacitor. And think of a capacitor like a battery that can be charged and discharged in a microsecond. And the only reason I'm adding this is because I'm somewhat afraid as the generator started to slow down, I would get a flicker in the bulb. And all this will do is when the light flickers, there's a surge because the magnet's running past the coil. And it'll charge this in the surge, and then when there's not the surge till the next surge, it'll drain. So basically all we're doing is taking a ripple. It's a ripple filter. And I don't even really think this is necessary, but I'm just putting it in there because, well, I bought 5 of them. And it's a positive and negative, and it's just gonna go across our light bulb, or in our case, an LED. Now, these are our diodes. They have a little black line on them. If you imagine, we're soldering the legs together just like that. You just created a bridge rectifier. That's called a full wave bridge rectifier. And it will do exactly what we want it to do. Now, Brett over at Survival Comms, he's actually mocked this up. He used one of the electric motors. He actually built a prototype and tried it, so I know it works. He's done a video on it, so be sure to go to his channel. I'll put a link in the description box below and go check out that video. Now I'm trying to shrink this down into a very small spot. So what I did is take these, they're just like that, and I twisted them together like that. Okay, now we're going to put those right there. Take these, same thing, twist them together. Now we're going to take, since that one goes there and this one goes here, we're going to put it right here. We're going to twist these like that and twist these like that. Now we've made that big bridge rectifier nice and small. I've cut a couple of pieces of heat shrink, and the heat shrink tubing will shrink up when we put heat on it. It'll suck tight. We're going to take this capacitor and we're going to wire it into this circuit. Now, electrolytic capacitors have a marking, and that marking is negative. So this is the negative leg, this is the positive leg. And what I'm going to do is take this positive leg, put it down here just like that. If we get it around once, I'll be happy. Okay, there's once. So it's a little loose. So before we go any further, let's go ahead and solder it on so that it doesn't come off. And we'll finish up this side of the circuit. Okay. Now that's there, it can't come off. Now if I move it before, let it cool off, let the solder solidify. Getting a little ahead of myself, I do that sometimes. Alright, we're going to slide that other piece of heat shrink tubing on there. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Second verse, same as the first. We have the rectifier circuit. We have the capacitor, negative, positive. Now we can start trimming all this stuff off because we don't need it. So we're not going to need all of this. We're going to solder onto these. We're going to need them. So let's solder them together so that they don't come loose while we're moving them around. All right, we still have 4 wires to hook to this. But before we do that, we're going to have to assemble the rest of our components. So let's set this aside. Here's the base that we've been working on, a few fingerprints on it. You'll notice that I spent some time polishing it. So what we'll do, 8/32 cap head screw, we'll put it in the hole. Make sure that it's straight, at least a good eyeball shot of it. Now the next thing is our electric motor. We don't need this plug that came on it, so that can go away. Now, what I found is that these motors, a lot of them, they're obviously made very cheap. I think I only paid $3 a piece for them. This can is not all the same size, so some of the cans that I got were the right size, and some of them were just a smidge loose. And if you can see, it does fit. There's no side-to-side real movement, but when I put this clamping screw on here, I have to really tighten the crap out of it to get it to pull down to tight, and I don't really like that. So what I decided to do is to just take and make a little paper shim. Single edge razor knife. Cut this little This is just standard El Cheapo printer paper, nothing fancy, just what I had to draw that circuit on. Now it's just that little strip of paper. Measure about 2/3 or better, 3/4 of the way around the motor. Now, if we take this, we should be able to real gently work it into the bore. Off, this one's a little bigger than the last one. Just needed a little bit of shim. These two wires now are going to pass through down into the bottom. Try to make them look nice and neat. And that's done. Now the next thing we have to do is put the street light in. I remember that little piece of brass that we soldered. We smoothed it off. It's going to go right there. Now, there's our little light post. But what I need is I need to put some kind of lamp cover over that. And this is what I came up with. I found this at a local electronic supply house called Skycraft Surplus. And with the Cape and all the Air Force and military bases here in Florida, electronic military surplus stuff is not hard to find. If you know where to look for it. And this place has been my go-to for the last 30 years or better. And they just have all kinds of worthless junk that you can make something out of. And what this is this is a neon indicator lamp. I don't want the neon tube in it anymore. I'm going to pull that out and you can see the neon tube. But anyway, that goes like that. Now, this is going to just be held in there with some hot glue because it won't come off when we're done. There's our LED, and I just soldered on a couple of wires with some heat shrink tubing on them. And here's what I want to do with them. Oh, one of the things I did is I took a piece of the heat shrink tubing around there because getting two wires at one time to go through that little tiny hole there makes you say bad words. And it's a lot easier to get them together to go through that hole. Just like that. There's our 3 to 5 volt LED. Here's our little cover, and the little cover will go on like that, and the LED will fit inside there. So, what I want to do is put just a little shmoo hot glue on there. Hot glue is one of those things you love and you hate all at the same time. And then I want to take and put a little hot glue down in the hole. Now that's in place. If we flip it over, there's where the wires come out. So to make sure those wires don't move, add a little more shmoo right there. Now we're in position to start figuring out how we want to lay this out. So we're going to bring our rectifier back over here. There's our rectifier. This is going to go in that little spot. Just for reference, bring this drawing back. And our rectifier should go like this. That means that this one should be positive and this one should be negative. Those are the two outputs. This one and this one and this one are the ones that are critical, because remember, an LED can only work if it's biased correctly, meaning it has the right positive and the right negative. So I want to cut these leads off here. Now, positive, negative. Confirming that I use the negative lead on here. So we'll take the positive lead right here. We'll just give it the old Bohemian leg wrap. Before we move this all around and that untwists and comes off and I start saying bad words and this thing goes from G-rated to R-rated, put a little bit of solder on it. Remember that heat shrink tubing we were talking about? Well, watch this. If you've never seen it before, it's pretty neat stuff. I use it all the time. Works really good. When you get it to its temperature, it'll shrink up. Usually just soldering shrinks it up. Doesn't really do anything for us. It doesn't need to be shrunk up. All it is when we fold this all up, it keeps these from shorting out where we don't want them to. Okay, now this is our negative, and this is our negative right here, and we can refer back to our drawing, a negative. So we'll take the negative and wrap it around there. Same thing as before. Keep this G-rated. That side of the circuit is done. Remember, these two wires right here, these come from our little generator, and our generator doesn't, it's going to be positive or negative depending on which direction we spin it. So we'll do the same thing here. We'll strip a little wire. This is the high-end Taiwanese wire. Normally, if I was doing something like this for most applications, I would do this on a little piece of breadboard like Brett did over at Survival Comms. Be sure to go over and check out his channel. He helped me out a lot on this, and he's got a pretty neat setup over there. These two are AC. We'll go back to that drawing. These two, which is these two right here. The polarity doesn't matter. It could be red or black. We're just going to wrap it around, tack it on there with a bit of solder. I'm just gently holding this. I'm not putting any pressure to crush those glass diodes. It's just hot. I don't want to stick my finger down there and try to hold back from saying something I shouldn't say. Same thing again. Now this circuit is soldered together. We're done with it. So when it cools here in a minute, we're going to fold it up so that it'll fit in there, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to make all this fit in there where the kids can't get their hands in there. Now before we hot glue this bad boy in here, we should be able to spin this and see the light. See the light when I spin it? I can spin it either direction and get that LED to light. Pretty cool, huh? So now we know that the circuit is good. None of the diodes or the capacitor isn't damaged, or my solder joint's bad, or anything along the way there. So what we're going to do is just move the wires around in a position, get them out of the way, and I'm going to kind of just, where I know that this rectifier, those corners aren't touching anything. And once I get that there, I'm going to shmoo it in place with a bunch of hot glue. And let's not get too excited because I got to get all these wires in place. Another way to say bad words is to get hot glue on your fingers. And I think it's worse than a soldering iron because the hot glue just doesn't come off easy. So you're kind of running around trying to get that finger cooled off, and it just hurts. They make those low temp hot glue guns, but I don't think they work as well, especially with metal, because the metal, as soon as the hot glue touches the metal, it sucks all the heat out of it. One of the other things, the other little tricks I've learned is like this wire just kind of wants to poke up proud just a little bit. If I just hold it down there for a few minutes, the hot glue is really not going to stick well to that metal part. So once it starts to cool off, I can kind of twist it and pull it out, and this will have cooled down enough to hold the wire in place. All right, well, we've got them all put together, and we're just about ready to wrap it up, give you a little test and let you see them work. I built 5 of them. Again, I have 3 sons, my nephew and my pop, who's 80 this year, and I built 5 of these steam engines last year. We hook a little bit of air line here to an air pressure regulator. Here's the pulley that we made, already attached to the shaft. A couple of things that I learned, and we'll probably have to address them at some other time. When I built this, all I did right here is I used a little piece of brass tubing for a little bronze bushing for the shaft, because let's be honest, it's a toy. It's not like it's going to get hours of use. But they've used them more than I thought they would, and they've played with them. They play with them all the time. They just turn them and like to watch all the parts move back and forth. And what I've noticed is that this has started to get a little bit of wear in it. You know, I didn't have plans. I just kind of made it up in my head as I went along. So what I'm probably going to do at some time is pull the crankshaft back out of it and put it in the mill, bore it, and turn a little bronze spoilite bushing. That'll keep some of that wobble out of there because we've got a lot of force hanging on the outside of this. But for a toy, it still works really well. I've tried all of them out, and all of them work really good, and I'm super pleased with them. Hopefully they will be. They better be. I hope you've enjoyed watching me build these Christmas presents for my family. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you real soon.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and like us on Facebook. Please, somewhere down below here is a link. See you soon.